How's it going, everybody? T Gaming Fanatic here. Just doing a little bit of a different video today. This is actually just going to be a general discussion video, kind of relating around Nintendo and the whole release with the Switch 2. This is kind of a more optimistic approach in regards to what I think the potential is for Nintendo and how they release their games, and us getting a potential good balance of high budget and low budget gaming as a whole. So right now, a lot of people aren't very pleased with the pricing with the Switch 2. The Switch 2 console itself, people are kind of okay with the price of the console, but the price of gaming going up, people aren't satisfied with. That's a whole topic for another debate, something that I'm not going to really dive into much today. But what I think is also very possible now, too, is the whole idea of us getting more high-budget games and also maybe a more focus or dedication to low-budget games as well. Because if you even look at the last Nintendo Direct that happened in late March, even though the Switch 2 is around the corner, we all knew about it, there's still quite a decent amount of Nintendo first-party games, or at least Nintendo-published games, that are coming out to the Switch 1 still. And some of them are heavy hitters, like Metroid Prime 4, Pokemon Legends ZA. Those are, low, IP games that Nintendo has. Those are very anticipated games, yet they're still getting a Switch 1 version as far as we know of today. And then we also have the new Miitopia, Tamagotchi Life, and the whole new Rhythm Heaven. So we're still getting a decent amount of Switch games for the original Switch, even as the Switch 2 is around the corner. And, we kind of always expect that. There's always been a history with video game companies always having releases coming out on their old console as they transition to the new one. It just becomes a matter of how long are they going to keep that old console alive before they phase it out. But I think there's a real good possibility that Nintendo might try to keep the Switch 1 around for a long time. And there's a few reasons I could think that's possible. Is one, they're bringing up the idea and focus on having very price point based off budget and scale of game. Now, that could be a double-edged sword. That could be Nintendo's way of just saying, hey, we think Mario Kart's a big IP and we put a lot of time into this, so we want to charge a premium. But that could also mean, hey, maybe they want to make a low-scale F-Zero game without putting too much, crazy assets into it. And it's a $30 game. All right, cool. If we're getting more games, at a lower scale, and they're still fun and solid and potentially come out quicker, I think that's a great opportunity. Because right now, we're seeing a lot in the gaming landscape right now where all these AAA games are taking so long to make and getting these insanely high budgets, and they're just not even hitting the marks that these companies want. And honestly, I don't even know what they were expecting in the first place, especially with the state of affairs right now with people's incomes and all that and extra money to spend on hobbies. It's just it's not viable for those types of games to really do well in this landscape right now. So if they actually decide to make a hard push and pursuit into more low-budget games again, I think that could be really great. And the way I see it, if they're making low-budget games, the low-budget games aren't going to have to utilize the full capabilities of the Switch 2. They should realistically be able to run fine on the Switch 1. So what do? You have a way higher install base on the Switch 1 versus the Switch 2 that hasn't even come out yet. The requirement and minimum in terms of specs is way more approachable, and it's probably cheaper to produce, whether it's digital software or physical distribution. So your best bet is to release it on last-gen hardware, get the higher install base. And especially right now with a lot of people saying they're not jumping on the Switch 2 right away, it's a good chance you're going to get a lot more sales pushing for the Switch 1. So that's another reason why I think it's going to be good, is because a lot more people are going to be more likely to buy it on the original Switch than pay for the overcharged Switch 2 version. And at the end of the day, Switch 2 is backwards compatible. So you still will be able to play just about all your Switch games. It's just you may have to spend extra for the more enhanced extra features version of those games, which is a drag, but it is stuff we kind of have already been seeing before. Hopefully there's enough to it that makes those worth it. But there are also other games that are getting free enhancements, and some included with subscription. So there's still a lot up in the air on how they're going to properly handle that. But also keep in mind too, Nintendo was very notorious for being that console and handheld maker back in the day. A lot of their games they produced on a handheld and a console, like Game Boy Advance and GameCube days, the Wii and the DS days, the 3DS and the Wii U days. They had different developers making games for both systems at the same time. Now, that used to be a critique for some people because, like for the Wii U, the 3DS was getting all the heavy hitters, and everyone's like, where's the Wii U games? Where's the good Wii U games? And it became a problem because Nintendo's had their assets divided between two markets. Now that the Switch 1 and Switch 2 are so similar and it's backwards compatible, you essentially have the same market, but in terms of actual entry for customers, you have two. So you kind of get the benefit of both worlds. So the way I see it is, if you keep producing games for the Switch 1, people who have the Switch 2, they can still buy the Switch 1 version and just play it right on their console. Otherwise, all the people who still have the Switch 1, they'll have no issue playing it at all. And if you even look back at some of the track record on games that were made and published by Nintendo, a lot of those games, even their heavy hitters, were still being produced on handhelds or last-gen versions of those handheld or consoles, even when the new systems were out. Like a lot of the Game Boy Advance games that a lot of people know and love, those are games that are still coming out and being made, even when the DS was already on the market. So it's pretty wild to think that there's a pretty good possibility that Nintendo might try to keep the Switch 1 alive. I hope they do, because there's a lot of IPs and properties that people want to see. Not every series needs a high budget game. Like, if you can have smaller, low budget teams make polished, fun games, make as many as you can. We don't need everything to be open world. We don't need everything to look 4K. We just need games to be fun and replayable. And that's just the way I personally see things. Obviously, this is a discussion-based video, so I'd like to hear other people's takes and ideas on this. Obviously, there's no guarantee set in stone on how all this is going to turn out and how Nintendo is going to, how long they're going to try and keep the Switch 1 alive. This is more just like an optimistic approach to how they could handle it and how I think it could be successful for them. But let me know what y'all think down below. I appreciate y'all for watching. Have a good one.